Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for Globe Summit 2024. My name is Max Reiss. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Communications at Eversource Energy and also the Chief Communications Officer. We are very, very excited to be the presenting sponsor this year of this year's Globe Summit with the theme of Boston Breakthroughs. We are very grateful to the Globe editor, Nancy Barnes, and the entire Globe team for putting this great event together with some incredible content today and, of course, tomorrow. It really is a wonderful event, and we are very honored to be joined today by a group of experts on an incredible partnership that Eversource has been involved with multiple incredible partners. We're joined today by Tom Evans, the Executive Director of the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority, Brian Koop, Executive Vice President of the Boston region of BXP, and our own Catherine Finneran, our Vice President of Transmission Project Development, Siting and Project Services at Eversource Energy, to talk about an incredible partnership that we've been working on with Cambridge, with BXP, that's going to be truly transformative for the Boston region. And before we get started with our panel, we really want to show our audience out there what it is we're talking about with this reliability solution, with this infrastructure project in Cambridge. So we can roll the video to really show our audience what we're talking about in Cambridge, the Greater Cambridge Energy Program. It's an exciting and novel program that's a first of its kind underground substation that will be located between Broadway and Binney Street in Kendall Square. It includes 5 underground duct banks housing 8 new 115 kV transmission lines. The substation will be integrated into BXP's large mixed-use development project at the former Kendall Center Blue Garage site. The transmission routes will span Cambridge, Somerville, and the Allston and Brighton neighborhoods in Boston and interconnect with existing substations in these communities. This project was innovatively designed to place a significant amount of the needed infrastructure underground and out of sight. Look at this, 120 feet underground, 35,000 square feet underneath a public green space between BXP's Life Science Center's buildings, which we'll hear more about, and 8 new 115 kV underground transmission lines spanning 8.3 miles. And these benefits include addressing the increased local electric demand in the region, which Tom Evans will tell us about, enhancing the resiliency of the transmission system, getting ready for those future storms, and ensuring a flexible grid to reliably serve customers while supporting the decarbonization and electrification goals of both the city of Cambridge and the Commonwealth. And the result of this project, customers can adopt more clean technologies to reduce carbon footprint for technologies like electric vehicles and heat pumps. And Eversource and our partners at BXP and Cambridge Redevelopment Authority and the City of Cambridge, we are collaborating to bring this unique solution to life. The goal is to begin construction on the transmission lines in January of next year, so we're months away. And the work on the underground element will be in coordination with BXP's own project. We expect that to start in 2027. And the project will be put into service in 2029 with the energization of the substation and the first transmission line. And as construction proceeds, the remaining transmission lines will be put into service throughout 2030. That was a mouthful, but
Great job.
I appreciate that. But look, I look at this video and it shows an incredible picture, right, of what it looks like in Cambridge. So Tom Evans, you've been at the start of this project. You've seen where Cambridge has been, where it's going. So how does this project fit in with the growth of Cambridge and where you're going to, meet the needs and the, especially when it comes to decarbonization of the community?
Thank you. The Kendall Square area has grown tremendously over the past 40 years to become really the center of the innovation and technology economy for Cambridge and the Boston area. All those gray boxes that were shown in the video all require energy. And there's also some blank spaces in those videos, and that's where more gray boxes are going. So there's a lot of growth that Kendall Square has been through and is coming up ahead. So as the demand for that new development was coming online, Eversource realized it needed to increase the capacity and also the redundancy of the electrical grid serving those businesses. And so when initially the Eversource project had another location for the substation that was in the East Cambridge neighborhood, closer to school, parks, and people's homes. And the community came to the city, came to city manager, city council, and said, we'd like a different solution. Do we really need this substation? And the answer is yes,
Yeah.
we do. We need it for...
you want to grow, you need power.
Yes, and if you want to electrify, if you want to meet our carbon
That's right.
goals, you need power. So there was an issue of not having a substation, so then we needed to find another place for it. And so the city manager gathered the development community together and said, I need a solution to this. And we stepped up with BXP to find a parking garage that was about 30 years old, and thought, well, maybe it could go where that parking garage is and put the parking underground. And after that, we decided to actually put everything underground.
Yeah.
And went forth with the development you saw there.
And Brian, the Life Sciences Center is right at the center of all of this.
Yes.
Right? It's right at the center of all of this. How did that factor in? And could you talk a little bit about BXP's involvement in all of this as well, working with the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority?
Yeah, you know, in some ways, I think of documentaries that you watch on television, and it gives you the inside scoop of things. And there's always what you didn't know, or coincidentally, where it was a relationship. So much of this is about a relationship. If we hadn't done the work with Tom in prior years with the CRA and the chairman Kathy on more complex things than we ever had, we wouldn't have been able to achieve this. If we hadn't worked with Eversource for many years on so many different solar panel things, we wouldn't have had the relationship. And we also had a relationship with leadership there, but also the ability to sit down with this bold idea, come together really quick. The relationships really, really mattered. But to answer your question, right around it is our Life Science Center, which is, we think, the most important in the world, as Tom mentioned. And we got key clients there expanding, the Broad Institute, Biogen, and then new to the center there is AstraZeneca.
And Catherine, these things don't just happen. It takes a lot of partnership, a lot of collaboration, but also there's a lot of intergovernmental, interorganizational relationships that happen. So could you give us some, some dialogue about that, but also, some of the highlights of what this energy program means for the region?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we already had a strong partnership with the city and with BXP dating way back. As far as this program itself, about 10 years ago, it was becoming more and more evident, the booming development in the area, thanks to the city and the redevelopment authority's vision and plans, as well as the city's strong greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, and Cambridge being an early adopter of things like electric vehicle and electric heat pumps. That demand was increasing. All of that's good, but from a system planning point of view, we were looking ahead, as we always do in planning for our system, and looking at the trajectory, and we needed to act quickly and make sure we had the infrastructure in place. That infrastructure has to be where the load is, where the people, the businesses, the community members are who need that energy. And the farther you are away from that, the longer the lines have to be, the less efficient the technology is, and the more impacts you have on the community and cost as well. So we had a specific area in mind. We were looking at Fulkerson Street to begin with. We listened to the community. We pivoted. We had these great relationships in place, and we had serious concerns about outages and disruptions to our customers that we were addressing, and it was a very innovative partnership. We had to think about siting the clean energy hub, the substation, and all the equipment that goes in it. Rather than building up, we were building down, and that was a very
for better or for worse. That's something the community cares about. Right?
Absolutely,
it's just true, right? You want your community to have a certain feel. You want it to be what you want it to be. And you mentioned collaboration. You mentioned about some of that. I'd love to hear from Brian and Tom, some of the relationship that went back, but also how do you engage a project like this? In your case, with your BXP partners and your friends in the region, but also for you, right? With the government, with the city, with your other people. How did you engage some of that discussion about how to get this at least started and then obviously across the finish line?
So, I mean, I'm an urban planner, right? So we talk in policy, and our technology expertise goes to to scale about Lego. And so well, can we put this underground? And then we had to look to the experts at Eversource to sort of say, well, yeah, that's a possibility, and here's all the challenges that would happen. And then look to the experts that BXP had in structural engineering and architecture to figure out if it'll all work together. So a lot of it was about trust, that we could trust that this was possible because we were talking to the experts in the room, and then explaining to the city and the city council what the limitations were. Like we found that you can't necessarily put a whole bunch of trees on top of a substation, for example. And what are some of the challenges of dealing with the streetscape while it's being torn up for these lines. So I think it's understanding the expertise and then working to collaborate on finding creative solutions and pushing. We definitely pushed the technical experts a bit, I believe, to doing things that they hadn't done before.
Just a bit.
Right.
A large amount. You know, the thing that's really interesting about this is that it's never been done before. I think there was one proposed on the West Coast.
That's right.
You all would know better from the power and energy side,
and this is the largest in the country, the largest underground substation in the country.
So when we sat down with Eversource and said, we think we can build 10 stories down, or approximately, and here's how we're going to do it, we referred to our Atlantic Wharf project. We had a method for that. And that gave Eversource confidence. But we are literally down to inches in terms of where the conduits are going through down there. And that took a lot of engineering, but we did it so quickly in the beginning to get the confidence to be able to sit with Tom and go, we got this bold idea, and we really needed Tom's sponsorship to be able to interpret this to the community.
So, Brian, one thing you said when we had our pre-conversation about this panel was you've been involved in a lot of different public-private projects. You've seen them all over the region. Your company has seen them all over the country. But you even said to me, you've never been part of a project quite like this one, where everybody was on the same page kind of from the beginning.
Yes, I will tell you, this has been the best experience I've ever had in a public-private project, bar none. And part of it is what it means and why, right? The grid is super important. It's super important to our economy. If we don't have economy, we can't do the great things we want to do for our communities. But the life science part, what they're discovering in that square, as Tom mentioned, it's just amazing. And because of that, I'll tell you, down to every engineer, every person that's walking steel for us, it means something. And we're really going out of our way to make sure it means something. But this has been the best project I've ever worked on.
Catherine, from an Eversource perspective, you know, we have the benefit of working for a company that has had some pretty remarkable innovative breakthroughs, especially in this region, in our area, right? We have our battery storage project in Provincetown. We have our geothermal Framingham pilot project. But this is unique in a lot of different ways. Can you talk a little bit how we pushed internally at Eversource? You know, Tom made a good point, like the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority was asking questions that maybe hadn't been asked before.
Yeah,
and then Eversource had to answer the call.
Absolutely.
Many questions.
Yeah.
And Tom's like, I actually have more questions.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. No, I mean, there was innovation on every partner part on this, whether it comes to like zoning and planning or construction, the expertise in construction and experience there to do something like this, of this nature. But from our point of view, you have the substation going underground. You have things like thermal, ventilation, configuration, water. You have to make sure it's a water-free environment.
Yes.
All of that, again, where BXP has expertise to help
That's also
with that.
resilience comes into
exactly.
play, right?
Resilience. So you have to get people in and out of there. You need the substation folks to be able to access the site. Then, in addition to the substation, you need to connect the substation to other substations in the area to create like a strong, resilient circuit. And so you need transmission lines, 8 transmission lines were in the video. You need to put those underground. You need to figure out the best route that's least impactful. And you need distribution lines as well to bring that energy to the customers, to our customers. So there is a lot to that, a lot of complexity. And I will say our teams have stepped up in every way, community engagement, engineering in particular, with the innovation that went into working on the development of this site. But every part of the company really stepped up to make this happen and work in collaboration with our partners.
One of the things that I'd like to say kudos to Eversource on is, look, it takes a lot of courage and leadership on Joe Nolan, CEO, Jimmy Hunt, the rest of your leadership to say, well, it's never been done, let's go do it.
Right.
And we really appreciate that.
I was going to say, and I mean, it really took all hands on deck across departments at the city as well. I mean, in addition to being focused on sustainability for energy, there's also water is a big issue. And so for this project, we're building a new storm 55-inch wide pipe running right along the site and have to weave the transmission cables underneath that. So a lot of coordination with DPW, not only because we're disrupting the streets, but also figuring out how to keep the water system running while you're building a new one. I mean, really is building the train while it's running down the tracks. The electrical grid, the water, the transportation systems all need to work while we're building this thing in the middle of a research hub.
And one part of this that you've all hit on in different ways is a sustainability and decarbonization element to this. We all work for different firms here actually that have significant missions when it comes to our carbon footprints and when it comes to our sustainability missions. Without a project like this, the academic institutions in Cambridge, their goals end up being in jeopardy, right? Other companies, their goals end up being in jeopardy. Tom, if you mind speaking just about the way this factors into the carbon footprint or reducing it for that matter in Cambridge?
Well, at the same time that this was going on, this Cambridge City Council is contemplating all sorts of new environmental regulations for buildings and also transportation. And so we have a series of deadlines for when buildings need to reach carbon neutrality. Any new construction by the city is carbon neutral at this point in time. And until we have another method, electrical generating heat is one of the biggest load challenges that we have. Probably also, I mean, you could tell us what's more, the electrical load or the need to move cars around by electricity, but we have all these new directions we want to take our lives and our research and everything. And we need the capacity for that to move forward. And I think one of the challenging things that we were all learning through this process is you can't generate all this electricity on site. That was one of the ideas. Like there's only so many solar panels you can put in Cambridge. We have to bring electricity in from elsewhere to meet those goals. And so I think our approach is how can we continue to grow and get greener at the same time? And that's a challenge, but that's taken innovation and cooperation and partnership as we've done.
And Brian, how did that factor in? I'd imagine at BXP, these conversations, you're dealing with clients all the time who will probably say to you in a meeting, okay, now let's talk about how this fits our goals. Right? I'm presuming that's something that happens.
Well, we were very educated and a leader in sustainability of our buildings. But again, a coincidence was we were educated on the importance of the grid. We had a relationship with Eversource, so we knew exactly why this was so important. But also we're on founding members of the Green Ribbon Council, our commission, and through that we were able to really have a better understanding of the importance of this grid, right, to sustainability. And I think that helped us a lot to say, okay, when we got the call, which again is a little bit of leadership and courage, Lou Pasquale from the city of Cambridge made a call to the community. We got to come up with another solution. We'd never experienced that kind of reach out to us all directly. And I think that is something that, please, communities continue to do that. But it was unique from the beginning. The importance of the grid was a big factor on this. Without the grid, we can't do all these wonderful things.
And interestingly, this is a unique solution for Cambridge, what we're talking about. It's a unique solution that fits with Cambridge. But there are serious lessons that can be learned about this collaboration, right? Like reaching out to the community. How do you engage? But while also having, Tom, to your point, parallel conversations. We need to grow. We need electricity. We want to do it clean. We want to do it responsibly. Right? Catherine, these are the kinds of things that you have to be worrying about and really thinking about when you're in the siting process and you're in the engineering process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this partnership and this project, this program has received actually, in the siting decision from the state, there was acknowledgement, these partnerships and creativity that everyone brought to the table and the engagement all throughout the process was what has made this successful. And I do think this is a great example of early engagement with the city, public-private partnerships, and making sure that happens, and also listening to the community and being flexible and pivoting and designing solutions to the need at hand in the area that they're needed. So yeah, a lot of great lessons learned, a lot of challenging conversations throughout the years that it took, but that's part of the process, and we got there, and it's a great outcome.
I won't forget the meeting we were discussing, the residential building that's sitting right that's basically the front door of the transmission lines. And we're discussing with the HVAC engineers and structural engineers the best way to heat this building. And at that point in time, BP made a commitment, we want this to be an all-electric building. This is an electrical grid project. And so that not just doing the bare minimum for what the development should be, but actually walking the walk and bringing online that I think will be the tallest electrical residential building in New England in 2028, I believe, is when it started moving people in. So, I mean, that was going deep into that mission and that spirit of the whole project tying into that.
Yeah, and I think we did all these inputs, though, in maybe not record time, but very expeditiously.
Mm.
But it was helpful to have you in the community, Tom in the community for interpretation of what was needed. That's why there's green space on top. We're aware, sure, but we wanted to get it right.
Yeah.
And that affordable component, Tom, was key to everything as well. But I think we were able to get the inputs very quickly to the satisfaction of the community.
We've covered collaboration, we've covered the community element, we've covered the sustainability element. Perhaps our last topic before we try to get to a question or two. What does this mean for economic development for Cambridge? I mean, Cambridge is already known worldwide as a innovation center, an academic center, one of the most important places, not just in New England, but the United States of America, when you think of what's come out of Cambridge. So Brian, I'll start with you, because you kind of have a macro national take to an extent as well. What does it mean for economic development moving forward? What kind of a message does this project send as far as what Cambridge is ready for moving forward?
Well, it says to the world of these companies that are looking at Cambridge, like AstraZeneca, Moderna, et cetera, that are all in a block of this, right? It says that we are prepared for the future. And so many of these companies are highly focused on sustainability, but they also need the assurance they're going to have power.
Yep.
I mean, no power, no innovation. So I think that's the big message. This market is prepared for what you want to do in your life science.
Tom?
Well, again, I'm not a computer expert, but as I hear from the computer experts,
You're an urban planner, we know. Yes.
established that from the beginning. The need of AI for
Yes.
for intense power, and people in these buildings actually wanting their own internal systems. So they want the research and the AI development to happen right there. So that draws a whole lot of power. So there was I think a time a few years ago where people were like starting to worry about, well, are we going to have the energy supply in Kendall? There's actually a little blip in energy load at one point in time in like 2018, and some people's servers clicked out like, okay, is this a stable place to grow our business? And I think this is what we're setting the table. So yes, we can provide that power and then some, and there's capacity to grow in this project.
And Catherine, for us at Eversource, we are, in a lot of ways, we try to be that front door on a lot of these economic development projects. For you in siting, as you have these conversations, what's one of the big takeaways from the economic development perspective for you?
Yeah, clean energy and economic development, I think, are clearly interwoven and
definitely.
mutually beneficial. And there is infrastructure needed to drive our economic development objectives as well as our clean energy objectives, whether it's at the state or regional level or the community level, leaders like the city of Cambridge. So we are enablers of making that happen. And we need to be partnered with our private and public sector partners as well as our communities in making that happen in the time frame that's needed to meet the urgency of the moment.
Absolutely. We have one question that's come in already from our audience online. We've acknowledged Cambridge is an innovation center. Do you envision a project like this succeeding in Boston proper or nearby? Were there advantages to working with Cambridge that may exist? Is there, I don't want this to be a negative question. So it's more, what are some of the advantages of working in Cambridge that you would need to perhaps manage working with Boston or another community nearby? It might be a bit of a broad question. So feel free, I'll send it to the group.
So real estate is very valuable in Cambridge. And so
I wasn't familiar.
So
Yeah.
we were able to leverage that value in order to go the extra mile to like dig this 100-foot deep hole and put a substation in it. So the substation costs are still borne by Eversource, but BXP had to move a parking garage and dig this deep hole, which is there now. It's fascinating to look at. So that property value certainly helps, but it's not the only place where development is going to drive interest in infrastructure.
But it's really about relationships. I mean, isn't it? Brian, I think that's probably where you're going to go, right? Yeah. I mean, you can succeed in an aggressive project like this because of relationships.
Yeah, it really is a commitment that we've already talked about, which is we want to do our best to teach others how to do this. And we've already done at least 30 tours of other cities that have come in, whether in the Commonwealth or outside. I think we're as far as Washington State has come in to take a look at what we're doing here. So we're committed to teaching, but when we teach on this and help people to envision what they can do in their town or community, we're going to be really stressing that you got to be rooting for each other.
That's right.
And you got to have empathies for each other's positions. That's big lesson out of this, right? It's easy to heckle from the side, but if we're all rooting for the same thing, and this is so important, the grid, sustainability, the environment, it really helps.
Yeah, and I will say on the community front, there are so many great lessons learned from this program that we're taking to heart and incorporating as we look to build out infrastructure to support this clean energy transition. But I'll also say from my career, every community is different. Every neighborhood within communities, and each neighborhood is not the same. And I think from Eversource's perspective, we are embedded in these communities, whether it's a blue sky day or during a storm. These are our customers, these are our people, our communities, and we need to work with those communities to make this happen and know what they want and what they need.
Even street by street, there are different priorities, as everybody knows.
We think it's teachable and learnable. We've already talked about it, and talked about providing case study for this.
One question that just came in is, could one of you, Catherine, this might be for you, could you expand on some of the benefits of the project with it being specifically put underground as part of the purpose, preventing others from gaining access to the site from a security standpoint? But also, if you can answer that to the extent you're able, but also, even some of the other benefits, Tom, just what does it mean for Cambridge with this thing being underground as opposed to it being above ground as we traditionally know it? So Catherine, if you start maybe with Tom.
Well, we have security measures no matter whether our substations are above ground, which traditionally they are, or underground. So we are very careful about that, and there are requirements around that for the safety of our communities and our personnel as well. I will say in this case, I think it was unique in that the city and the Redevelopment Authority had a vision, right, for mixed use, a certain type of use in this area. And I think what's great about this project is we need to build a substation, and we could do that in concert with other needs and address multiple needs with one solution. And I think that's what's really special about this.
I mean, if you took a step back and looked at this block 3 years ago before the garage was there, you had a series of buildings with a big parking garage in the middle. And you had to walk through the garage or walk around the garage. Even Biogen folks going between their offices had to maneuver through this garage. So now we've removed this garage, and there's now a park that's there. So now we have a nice plaza. It's going to have different kinds of recreational opportunities and retail opportunities there in the middle of this development. The development's grown, but in the middle of it is this public open space that people will be able to enjoy and connect all the buildings together as a campus, much more than it was before with a garage in the middle of it. And there just happens to be a substation underneath.
It connects the community. That's what it does, right, Brian?
Absolutely. And, we're thrilled about the fact we're going to have a playground as a portion of this.
It's great.
And the benefits that came out of it are great. But on the resiliency side, there is a climate resiliency package about this being underground that's beneficial, for sure. And there's several other benefits along the climate resiliency side of having this underground versus above, not to mention just wear and tear, weather, et cetera. So there definitely is a climate benefits to this.
And Catherine, resilience is now a core of transmission infrastructure, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it's especially in this part of the country. So if you could expand on that a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, with climate change, we're seeing more severe weather more frequently, and we have to plan for our substations, the new clean energy hubs that we're developing to meet this clean energy growth, and think about those things in the communities that we're putting them. So, and working with communities on their climate goals as well, and thinking that through. We need to provide reliable power to our customers and the people who need the power. And in order to do that, we need to protect against extremes and make sure our infrastructure is resilient. And that's what this project does. It really ties this new substation into a network of other substations in the area, creating a very strong and fortified link between the substations to create this reliable power that's needed for both business and communities, whether it's in Cambridge or Somerville or Alston Brighton.
Yeah, this particular substation is going to be a real anchor in the entire grid in Cambridge. And the sophistication about how Eversource gets into, let's say, do monthly repairs, et cetera. We've got hatches that come up that are actually green and turfed.
Yeah.
It's really something in terms of the accommodations you allowed us to have for you to get in there.
That's right.
And I think the connectivity of the grid is symbolic also of the network of innovation hubs that the economy in Boston has.
That's right.
So this is going to be connected to another substation in Somerville by Union Square, and that's where Somerville is growing their innovation economy. It's connected to Alston Brighton, where we see a whole new project will be emerging there. So it's a network of not only electricity, but also of innovators and science pushing both the economy forward and also solving world problems, whether it's energy related or bioscience,
Absolutely.
or otherwise.
Tom Evans, thank you so much. Cambridge Redevelopment Authority, Catherine Finneran, my colleague at Eversource, thank you. And Brian Koop, of course, from BXP. Thank you all for joining us today. So please stay tuned for the rest of the Globe Summit. The next panel is with Aaron Pressman, with a panel with New England tech leaders all about harnessing change in a rapidly evolving industry. Stay tuned. My name is Max Reiss, Eversource Energy. Thank you for tuning in.